Hello lovely people, welcome to EduTech. My name's Stephen Colber and this session is entitled Instructional Video to Differentiate Instruction. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to view this pre-recorded session. I'm sure there's a lot of other things you could be watching live, but thank you for stepping in and engaging with these ideas. Of course, before we jump in, I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. So what we're going to be talking about today is ways to use instructional video to differentiate your instruction. It's my belief, despite all the great work of people like Tomlinson discussing differentiation, that at least in Australian secondary high schools, which is my sort of area of expertise, and not much beyond that to be honest, differentiation doesn't actually occur in the way we would like it to. And I think technology, really, educational technology is probably the way that we need to get that happening. The only time I've ever seen differentiation done well was in my class or others, when they were using instructional video or some kind of direct instruction via another form, be it a podcast or a video. So to me, podcasting is good, it's lovely, but it's very 2D, it's very old-fashioned. Instructional video gives you a lot of different options, such as the ones that you see me engaging with at the moment. So, to me, I'm an English teacher primarily. English is an additional language, and English language being my primary areas, and literacy support. So across those four areas, my real belief and passion is bridging the old world and the new world. So as an English teacher, a big thing that we expect students to do is to read a text and to be able to report back to us kind of their thoughts and annotate it and take notes in it and really make sense of it. And so a lot of that needs to be done over summer, over the Christmas holidays or during their holiday breaks. And so I use the method of instructional videos and annotation guides and annotation sort of work through. So we'll work through a book, we'll annotate it, we'll underline, we'll highlight. I do enough of those that I feel like they can do it independently. And I trust the fact that when they go onto their holidays, that they can use the videos that I've left in a time and place of their choosing. So that's my why. A little bit of research to back it up when teaching or working with staff or pre-service teachers. The TPAC model is what I go with. So we've got our kind of technology and our pedagogical knowledge and our content knowledge. To me, they all work in harmony. So the technology is not the key thing. Without my pedagogical and content knowledge, the technology piece wouldn't add much, but when you combine them together, you can get something really unique and new coming together. So, simple stuff. To me, why instructional video? A big part of it for me is inclusion. Differentiation is basically within normal bounds, whereas I think of it as inclusion being kind of those students who are beyond those normal bounds, and so they require a bit of extra support and a little bit of extra help. Also, it's a way of multiplying the teacher, essentially. So rather than me standing at the front, being stuck to a desk, tied to a PowerPoint, or talking through any document of any kind as the single input point for students, by using instructional video, I can multiply those input points and have students all in the one room, with headphones or without, working on individual tasks best tailored and suitable to them. So rather than me just saying, here's what we all receive at the same time, because that's, we're all learning in lockstep on a train, I'm able to branch the paths and say, okay, this group over here, you need to be watching video 1B, 1D and 1E. This group over here, you're way ahead of that, so you're up to 3 and 4, and you're looking at different levels of analysis, which of course would be a different video. And to me, basically, and I could go into great detail on this, but I won't. Basically, a video is in superior learning input, output than alternative. So they've done tests, workshops, worksheets, workshops, PowerPoints, audio files, podcasts, all those sort of things, and they can prove pretty scientifically, at least in a lab, perhaps not in a live working classroom, which is a different thing and a much more interesting beast. They've found and proved that a video is a superior form due to what we call the multimedia principle, which is basically, it's a way of overcoming the limitations of our brain, and it has a multiplicative effect that is superior to just reading words on a page. So again, I'm not going to go into great detail about these, but cognitive load theory tells us that the multimedia principle supports this, makes it simpler for us. We've got the multimedia theory there. Flipped learning is a pedagogical approach, one that I've dabbled in, I don't use consistently. Instructional video is a consistent part of my practice, flipped learning being just one means of applying instructional video, but if you've heard of it, this might help you to sort of contextualize what we're talking about here. Video modelling, especially special education, they use video modelling, and I have as well, in that setting to show students how to do things, quite often from the student's own point of view. So if you're teaching, say, a student to tie their own shoes or something like that, you do it from their perspective, or you get them to model it and show them a video of themselves doing the task. So very similar methodology, pedagogically being applied in a different way, but definitely very interesting. Assistive technology is, of course, supporting students in a whole range of ways, and from my experience and my understanding of the research, video is, if you did one thing to assist all students to use a universal design for learning approach, if you implemented videos across the school, that in and of itself would be a sufficient and significant improvement on the accessibility and a way of using assistive technology for your students. So I won't go into this, but this is the model, perhaps the best working theory or model that we have of the brain and the way that communication gets into the brain, and this is where the multimedia principle comes in, but I'm not going to get bogged down in that too much. So it's better. Short little personal anecdote. So for me, what got me into instructional video was I taught Year 9. So back in June 6, 2016 was my first video on my teaching channel, Mr. Kolba's Teaching. I taught poem, meta-language for many, many years, often to multiple classes, so 2 or 3 classes at once. As a young teacher, you might be familiar, Year 8 and Year 9 classes are sort of a lot of what you get. And so rather than deliver the same PowerPoint 100 times, I made this very poor quality video that I'm quite embarrassed about now. Blurry camera, audio was scratchy, it was an ugly PowerPoint, nothing was especially professional or slick looking, but it was viewed maybe 500, 600 times, not only by students in my class, but others as well. And so that was my means of sending students home. I said, watch this, take some notes, come back to class, we'll discuss it. And that basically revolutionized my teaching ever since. And it basically freed me from having to deliver the same thing year upon year. If you think of the famous saying, try not to be a teacher that does the same thing every year. I found, for me personally, professionally, it's made things a lot more interesting because I really quite often, quite simply never have to go back and reteach things that I think I've perfected. So if I don't make a video of everything, but if there's something that I feel like I've nailed that concept, the way I teach it is going to be consistent. That's the best way. There's example 1, example 2, and example 3. They're all locked away in my mind. These are the ones that I use. I'll turn that into a video, and that task then becomes something students can do in class or at home or some combination of those, and that frees me up, and that allows me to not teach the same thing over and over again. If that sounds appealing to you, then I guess instructional video might be looking at yourself. So then, of course, as with anything, moving from a teacher with what I feel like is a cool idea to sort of more leadership processes, we've since tried to build it into our school at Brunswick Secondary College. So the middle picture is myself and Derek Lenny, our head of learning technologies, and this is our whiteboard. We've got our swivel camera in there, we've got podcasting equipment, we've got a green screen, we've got a whole range of things that our teachers can use to create instructional videos for our students. The top right hand corner is a picture of one of our, the back of the head of one of our students at our school, and they're actually engaging with a maths teacher that was not actually in their class, so they had a different maths teacher in the room. I was there to help out, and he was accessing a differentiated point of instruction from a different maths teacher who was able to extend him beyond the concepts that the rest of the class was working on at that time. And that's the kind of thing that gets me excited, that makes me think maybe there might be something to this instructional video idea. Quick little tour of this room, just so you can get an idea. We did this with no budget. We're a public government school. You can see a lot of QR codes to talk people through it, a couple of markers, a bunch of basically we just had anyone who could help out bring things in. Our green screen is quite low sort of technology, let's say. It's a piece of fabric stapled to the ground. We've got a decent little lighting kit, and this is a number of sort of examples of what it might look like.
Is to turn the camera on, to participate fully in the class, and to be asking your teacher lots of questions during that class.
Delivering a sort of back to remote learning, unfortunately, video from our instructional design lab, and again, just to give you an idea of how it all works, some podcasting stuff, and perhaps the most confusing element for most people, which is the light board. So a light board is just like a whiteboard. It's a piece of glass, and it allows teachers to be actually, they write their way, and then in post we flip the text so that it comes out in a readable fashion, let's say, and that any teacher in anywhere in the world can look at this piece of technology and say, I instantly understand how this works, and start teaching. And for us, the most exciting part is when you get a whole bunch of teachers in a room gathered around the light board, and people are taking it in turns teaching concepts while other teachers are watching, observing, and building best practice and giving feedback to one another on, oh, I would have explained that differently, or maybe we could use a diagram. All those sort of things are the kind of exciting things that we like to work on. Okay, so that's my hard sell, I hope, either from my personal anecdote of being freed from the drudgery of repeating old PowerPoints, old ideas, things that I've nailed down in my teaching, things that I could explain to a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, someone with a PhD, and also the students in my class. I'm freed from having to repeat those things. I've nailed it, I've got it as a video. Research definitely seems to suggest that this is very supportive of students. If you think perhaps of our current situation, remote learning for many of us in Australia at various points and various times. Us in Victoria, we've been basically doing it for close to 200 days, which is a long time. But the video element of Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, there's a certain element of lack of rehearsal, off the cuff, let's just get through it, that we bring to our remote teaching. But instructional video is taking that time that you would spend waffling and clicking, am I live, can you hear me, am I muted, should we record this, all those little messy areas. Instructional video is taking that time out, making the video preferably beforehand, a session, and providing it to students and saying, watch this, then we'll come together and we'll do the collaboration together. So rather than just using Zoom as a one-way talking machine, as many of us do, including myself, instructional video frees us a little bit from that kind of constant treadmill of got to start a meeting, got to get all the students in, got to mark the roll, all those kind of things, and frees us a little bit for them to have flexibility to access the content, and for us to have flexibility to access it and produce it in our own time and in our own way. So how do we make it happen? Basically cheaply, quickly, effectively. I'm an English teacher, so a lot of these will be sort of books and things like that, but I haven't bought anything. I've kind of gone to an empty classroom, plugged in a microphone if I have one, and set up a little system like this. You can get a nice document camera if you're using a lot of textbook stuff, but not necessarily required at all. And these are other people doing similar things. Lots of kind of punk rock about these, sort of just using what we have, DIY, smash banging and crashing our way through all this kind of stuff, and just getting something that works. So research basis we've done. Forms of video for me, for me as an English teacher will be different for you. Most common instructional video typically is used by science and maths teachers because they just think there's a sheer volume of content that needs to be gotten through, to progress through. We need to get through it, we need to get the students across it so that we can revise and test and exam and critique. Me as an English teacher, I do a lot of grammar stuff, we do spelling tests occasionally, lots of annotating of books, occasionally we read books aloud, and explaining key themes and concepts and context for novels. So kind of normally the higher level skills and some of the more basic skills that can sort of just free things up a little bit. So 6 different ways that we can use it. The obvious one is not doing it, which is probably just delivering it straight without a video, or in the case of remote learning, just talking into a Zoom or a Google or a Microsoft output. You could do a shared viewing, so put it up on the screen or whatever you have in your classroom, play it, pause it, play it, pause it. That's always a bit odd because you're right there and the video is of course you talking, unless you've made it something, maybe a more low-tech video, there's a lot of images, maybe music, snippets, those sort of things that would make a lot of sense. You could do a partial flip, so this is where Some of the work is done at home, maybe some preparatory work. In the same way you would at, say, a university course, you do some reading, you might watch a video, and then when you come to class, you're doing the kind of the tutorial element. You're working through it as a group of professionals, of learned people. In-class rotation is what I described earlier. You've sort of got different students differentiated at different points, working on different skills, different tasks, different activities, with video to tie it and cohere it together. Blended, it's probably what I use most often. It's a mixture of all of those. And this sort of golden goose is the full flip, where all of the students complete the majority of the sort of direct instruction work at home. I've never seen anyone actually achieve it, but that is, theoretically possible. So how might you do it? I always start really low. I do a lot of work in Cambodia, training teachers there, and sometimes get the benefit of working with some pre-service teachers. So we're aiming the bar low. You're probably thinking, but I'm at EduTech, I've got a million ideas, I've got a tech budget up the wazoo. Of course, there's a whole bunch of ways that you could do that, including the kind of setup I'm using now. But basically, click camera, press record. If you stuff up, stop, go back, do it again. You probably don't want to be editing if you're at that level. Just record a meeting. So if you're in Teams, record it. Google, same thing. But then you're probably thinking editing if there's students involved. My favorite is the online broadcaster software, OBS. I use that to record anything on my screen, as I am doing right now. So now Microsoft's helped us out a little bit. If you use Microsoft Stream and you're a Microsoft school, you can now actually natively do it within Stream and get it straight into Stream that way, if you prefer to do it that way. Flipgrid's a nice, easy, quick way that you can even get your students to be involved in and get them actually using the tool to produce short little quick videos. This is sort of the idiot-proof kind of platform that I would use if I had a very short amount of time to get people involved in video. So if you're running maybe a PD for staff, this might be the kind of thing to get them the taste for it. If you want, you can stuff around, put some Snapchat filters on things, make things a bit more interesting, splice in some B-roll. All those things are possible to make your videos a little bit more interesting for your students. So that's essentially my why and my how, the methods and the means for doing it. And now this is just a little bit of a section of if this has whetted your appetite or piqued your interest, some places that you can explore it first. So first thing, an article in Vague Idiom, which is an English teacher's journal, instructional video in the middle years. I break down different ways that I do it and use it for my English class that I hope people could be able to follow through with their own. Of course, there's a QR code because that's all in vogue now. This book's forthcoming, but it's novel ideas for teaching books. Again, English centric, but I have a chapter in there about instructional video and flipped learning as well. Monash has got a really good, albeit text heavy sort of guide for online teaching and building in interactivity, of course, which is one of the key elements of instructional video. You're never just going to say, watch this video and do nothing. That would of course not be good teaching. That would be not good pedagogy, or in fact andragogy for that matter if you're working with adults. But the interactivity is, think of a way that they'll be responding to it. Are they taking notes? Are they making voice recordings? Are they making a video of their own in response? Are they teaching another student? Think of how you can build in interactivity, and of course this gives you a lot of digital means that you can do that. So different strategies, Edpuzzle, all these kind of different apps that you could use, or ways that you could work natively within your own system at your school. The flipped learning course to me has sort of been a boon. It is a paid course and I am directly involved with it, though of course I don't receive any monetary, payment for being involved. It's purely voluntary, but hundreds of hours of sort of how to make the videos, why you might use them, when you might use them, the way different people use it across different content areas. I can't recommend this enough. This sort of got me from stuffing around in an empty classroom in my school to sort of doing things that are pedagogically quite exciting, I feel. I haven't talked about those, of course, too much at this point, because it's sort of an entry-level course, let's say. There's a teaching online masterclass that you can get through ClickView or through Adobe. A whole bunch of organisations came together. I'm one of the experts on there as well. But you have different countries, different places and different systems. So anytime you're going outside your own bubble, your own thinking, I find that very useful, and so these masterclasses are good. ClickView is a separate course. This is just all of my content synthesized into a really neat place. The whole course will take you half an hour to complete, and of course it's freely accessible or also available on my YouTube channel if you're not a big don't have access to ClickView at your school, or those sort of things. So I've been Stephen Colber. We've been talking about instructional video to differentiate instruction in your classroom. I would love it if you click any of those links or follow any of those points to chase these ideas up with me. I'm very available to help you out, support you through engaging with any of these ideas. This is sort of the things that I do for fun when I'm not teaching my classes and doing my core work. So I'd love to be connected, and by all means reach out, find me on any of these channels or any others in fact. So thank you very much for your attention and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.